Hello. Good evening. I'm Deborah Meyer, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Moving Traditions, and I'm so delighted, thank you very much, thank you. I am delighted to be here with you this evening, celebrating Alisa Robbins Doctoroff. And celebrating the launch of Moving Traditions' Pathway to Flourishing Jewish Teens. We're honoring Alisa because of her commitment to Jewish education and to Jewish community, including serving as a member of the Moving Traditions Board for 12 years. And we're honoring Alisa because she is a lovely human being, which I'm sure you will all agree, and deserves to be honored. In this challenging moment of history, I've been thinking a lot about the purpose of Jewish education and Jewish community. Our culture, I don't have to tell you, is going through tremendous upheaval, with the rise of hate speech and violence based on anti-Semitism, racism, and misogyny. It is hard for us as adults to navigate all of this. It's a daily onslaught of terrible news from our country, from Israel, and from all around the world. It's hard to keep our optimism, it's hard to keep our resilience, and if it's hard for us, it's even harder for teens. In addition to what is happening in our civil society and to our planet, teens struggle with their own unrelenting 24/7 social media attention, where they feel pressured to showcase perfect bodies and perfect social relationships, which is very different from how we grew up. This generation of teens also faces mounting pressure to perform perfectly, both academically and their extracurricular activities, in order to get into the best colleges and universities. It's no wonder that teens are experiencing an epidemic of anxiety and depression. So, what is the role of Jewish education and Jewish community? Religion, at its best, can help us understand what it means to be a human being in relationship with and responsibility for other people, for self, family, community, and the wider world. In this moment in history, it is more urgent than ever before. Really, it's been, since 50 years or more that it's this urgent for us as Jewish adults to help Jewish teens develop a moral compass with which they can understand and navigate the world around them, and that we inspire them to work for social change. And this is just what Moving Traditions does. Moving Traditions takes an understanding of the latest approaches to social emotional learning, and we connect them to an analysis of our society's gender and social norms. And then we connect both of those to our enduring Jewish wisdom and teachings. We take this powerful combination, social emotional learning, a gender critique, and Jewish teachings and values, and we apply it to the joys and the challenges of Jewish youth from grades 6 through high school. We provide preteens and teens with the opportunity to explore the world around them so that they can flourish as individuals and so that they can learn how to create and participate in communities of value, both Jewish and secular. Our new pathway to flourishing Jewish teens starts in 6th and 7th grade, and it continues through high school. In 6th and 7th grade, for B'nai Mitzvah students and their parents, at really the time when families are most engaged in Jewish life, that's when we begin our first program. We train clergy and Jewish educators to facilitate conversations between preteens and their parents at a time when they really need to begin to develop empathy and communication with each other. We're taking the most experienced Jewish ritual, bat and bar mitzvah, which can often be seen by families as something that happens in the synagogue over there, that place which we don't often spend time in, And we are bringing Jewish teachings and values to core conversations within families at this stage of life, the transition to the teen years, creating a personally meaningful Jewish experience. The pathway to flourishing Jewish teens then continues in 8th grade through high school with small teen peer communities, Rosh, Hodesh, Shevet, and Sholom groups that meet once a month. These are safe places where teens are emboldened to explore, with a Moving Traditions trained adult mentor, the often highly gendered issues that they face each day. Their developing bodies, friendship, romance, intimacy, and sexuality, and of course, stress, academic and social stress. In this way, we help Jewish youth connect, challenge, and change. Connect to themselves and each other, and to Jewish life, of course. To challenge the world through a moral framework, and to work for change, so they can help create the world that they want to live in for themselves and for others. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from a panel of our Moving Traditions teen group alumni, young adults who participated in Rosh, Hodesh, and Shevet groups as teens, facilitated by 2 talented Moving Traditions group leaders. And I'm so delighted that you will hear for yourselves about the impact of the work that you are helping make possible. Our greatest hope is that you will continue to support the work that Alisa helped to build, so that Moving Traditions can embolden more Jewish youth, especially in these challenging times, so that Jewish youth will flourish, confident, compassionate, and connected to Jewish community. So thank you for joining us this evening. I want to say thank you to the fantastic Moving Traditions staff, led by the indomitable Lisa Gersten, who helped make this evening possible. Thank you very much.
We are so honored to be here. My name is David Lieberman. I am a Shevet group leader. I've been a group leader for, I guess, eight or 9 years now. I'm going to introduce Dana.
Hi, I'm Dana Levinson Steiner. I was a Rosh Hodesh group leader for many years at Temple Israel Center in White Plains, as well as at the 92nd Street Y. We are so thrilled to engage in an amazing conversation with these incredible alumni who are going to talk a little bit about their experience in Rosh Hodesh and Shevet Achim.
But first, why don't we talk a little bit about our experience as group leaders and how
Happy to
that's
talk
affected us.
about myself.
So I was part of the first pilot that worked in the boys program for Moving Traditions. At the time, it was called the Brotherhood. Now it's called Shevet. And I found that in my work, being trained and then working with young men, and then also eventually becoming a trainer and working at the Moving Traditions conferences, working with other educators who are taking on this role and this responsibility, I found that it's been really a life-changing work. Even though I went to very progressive Jewish day schools and I went to liberal arts college, I found that despite all the encouragement I'd received to express myself and love myself, that a lot of pieces were missing that I actually found through my work with Moving Traditions and being forced really to model openness and compassion and think critically about being a man, and being forced to do that work for myself so that I could do it with the teens has really changed the way I approach the world and the way I see myself, and especially I have to say the mentorship of Rabbi Daniel Brenner, who has been a huge friend and teacher for me. So that's I feel really honored to be here and to be a part of this work. Yeah.
So I have been a lifelong feminist, and I grew up in a house that really valued independence and really a strong sense of self. But with all of that being said, I also recognize that when you're in middle school, it's some of the most uncomfortable and strange experiences that a young girl or young man or a non-binary child can have. It's a really confusing time. So when I discovered Rosh Chodesh, It's a Girl Thing, I was completely enamored with the idea that women could come together once a month and really gather around this incredible Jewish calendar that we have, which is, it really speaks to who we are as women and really speaks to who we are as people. And it was such a privilege to be able to work with 7th grade girls in White Plains and with 9th grade young women, including some daughters of some folks in this room who are really incredible. Maddie, really phenomenal. And I'm also a Jewish communal professional. I serve as the director of Access Global for AJC, the American Jewish Committee. Woo! And previously, I worked at the Bronfman Center for Jewish Student Life at NYU for many years. So my work in Rosh Hodesh, It's a Girl Thing, really made a lot of sense for me. Even though I was working with college students, it was like looking in the mirror and really allowing me to understand, okay, this is what middle schoolers and high schoolers are currently dealing with. I know what college students are dealing with. How can we sort of work holistically and create a space in which young women can really feel confident? They can feel prepared. Much of the 9th grade curriculum last year focused on consent, which is such an important conversation that should not only be happening in college, obviously should not be happening only with adults. So to have that conversation with middle schoolers, with high schoolers, is so critical. The work that Moving Traditions does is really life-changing. It gives folks the ability to feel like they have agency, they have choice, they have decision-making abilities, but I don't need to tell you that because all of these amazing young people can. So what we would love is to hear, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your name, how long you were involved with Rosh Hodesh or Shevet Achim, and anything else we should know.
Thank you so much. My name is Becky Barnett. I'm currently 23 years old. I am working as a study coordinator in clinical research at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. This is something that I'm doing on the path to medical school, so if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I graduated from Cornell in 2017, and beforehand, I was a Rosh Hodesh member from 2008 until 2013 at Temple Shrei Tefillah in Bedford, New York.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Sobelsohn, and I did Shevet through middle school and then freshman year of high school with David. I'm currently at Columbia University and about to graduate next week. So it's happening. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Julia Friedman. I just finished my freshman year at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I was a Rosh Hodesh member from throughout middle school and then my freshman year of high school at Congregation Beth Elohim in Park Slope.
Hi, I'm Bennett Decker. I use he, him, his pronouns. I go to the joint program between Columbia University and the Jewish Theological Seminary, so also just a few blocks uptown. Studying political science at Columbia and Talmud at JTS, trying to figure out if I want to do Judaism or politics with my life. See my bio for the joke about that. I'll turn the mic over now.
Great. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So you've talked a little bit about your experiences being in either Rosh Chodesh or Shevet Achim, and we would love to hear about the impact that your group leaders had on you.
Okay, so David was actually my group leader. Really upstanding guy and amazing. Yeah, he doesn't pay me to say this. He's a really good role model and mentor, and a lot of things that he taught us about communication, about building friendships. Our group is still very, very good friends, and I'm still in touch with a lot of the guys that I knew from middle school, which is something really incredible, and I think speaks a lot to David's ability as a teacher and somebody to inspire. So it's pretty amazing.
My group leader was someone who we were really close with and had the perfect balance of friend and role model / mentor. And throughout the college process was also, even though she wasn't our group leader anymore, she was someone who we all turned to, even though it had been a year or two since she had been working with us, which was something that was really special.
My group leader was amazing. His name is Ami Munson. I'm assuming there's someone in this room who probably knows him. He's a really well-connected guy in the Jewish world. I'm a really big soccer fan, which is one of my off-brand facts. Ami was this, for those who are fans of soccer, there's this term called man manager. It's a manager who doesn't just like do the tactics and like substitute players, but actually really connects with their players and knows what they're feeling off the field. And that was Ami. Ami would drive Shevet Achim guys to and from Shevet Achim meetings, and really like take time out of his life to bond outside of the 1 hour we spent together every few weeks, to like really, really get to know us on a personal level. And that was like incredibly inspiring for me as I like now step into mentorship roles later in life, and really demonstrated for me the kind of mentor that I want to be for all younger people that I do work with.
And we were really lucky to have a group leader who decided that she would take us under her wing. She has a number of sons, and we became the pseudo daughters in her life that she never had. So she served as not only a maternal and a role model to us all, but also as a really great friend and a support, someone who was there to support us throughout the whole process. She's also someone who throughout the year, she'll reach out to us, and as we're done with college, she always tries to get us to come back together, and we do still in New York City, those of us who are still here, and that's always a really amazing group to reconnect with, and she's the one who's always leading the charge in that.
Thanks. I'm wondering if the panelists would be willing to talk about some of the skills that they developed as part of moving traditions, and ways that they might be drawing on them still today. Anyone feel like taking that?
Yeah. So like I said, I think that like engaging with people and the people that you mentor in really close and personal ways. I do a lot of work with LGBTQ youth, LGBTQ Jewish youth. A lot of them come from backgrounds that aren't necessarily positive for one of those two identities. Either their Judaism they don't feel particularly connected to, or their queerness is not something that's accepted as part of their community. And you can't just like sit with them for an hour and like run through the program and then be done. And the way that like that was modeled for me in Shevet of like how to really like get inside the head one-on-one of a person that you're mentoring is still an incredibly valuable skill that I use today.
Sure. So something that we really grew with in our group was open conversation and learning how to have unique and like controversial conversations in a good manner. And going to school in the Midwest was very different than my childhood in New York. And so I often found myself having conversations with people who had never met a Jewish person before and had never had a friend that was Jewish before. So I was put into a situation where I was having these conversations that I was not used to having at home, but I found myself more confident than I had expected in having those conversations.
And bouncing off what Bennett said, we were part of a group that was really encouraged to connect. And I think that that's something really important now more than ever, is that Joan, our group leader, was really firm with us in doing things like putting away our phones, which is a crazy concept to think about now, having teenagers put away their phones. And for us, it was truly transformative. Putting away our phones and not talking about homework and studying so much, and especially growing up in Northern Westchester where there's a lot of pressure around college and the next step. It was just an amazing time to relax and to totally disconnect from all the things that were going outside of the room and really connect with each other. So that was really, really important value that I take to today in life. I had a birthday party recently for myself, and I asked that everyone leave their shoes and their phones at the door. And it totally transformed the whole evening, and I don't think that this would have been as important of a thing to do had it not been for our group leader and the messages that she brought to us.
Yeah, so of the many things that David taught us, I think that one of the things that has stuck with me throughout my life has been how to process emotions and how to do it in a group setting. I think being a middle school-aged guy, you have a lot of questions about masculinity, about what society expects of you, and I remember watching an Old Spice ad. We all watched it together. We deconstructed things that we related to, things that we didn't, and I think just knowing that people are going through the same thing as you all the time, and having the same questions about their identities and about how they fit into society is something that I've definitely taken through high school and through college, and probably will keep on using my whole life.
Awesome. I love the idea of phoneless anything. That sounds fantastic. And Julia, you really tapped into this idea that, above all, the programming offered by Moving Traditions is inherently Jewish. There's really amazing Jewish values, whether it's leaning into the Jewish calendar or different Jewish prayers. So how would you say that your Moving Traditions experience enriched how you connect to your Judaism or your Jewish identities?
The one thing that we learned a lot about and I focused on in my group was community. And all throughout my life, I was a member of my congregation, but Rosh Hodesh group was kind of my first thing that was personal to me and personal to my friends. And that was something that we shared together. And going to college, that was one of the most important things for me, was finding a similar or different Jewish community that I could be a part of. And so now I'm really involved in Chabad at my university, which is really nice.
Yeah, so I remember in synagogue and Hebrew school being read a lot of different texts and learning about Jewish values and things, and it didn't always stick. And David would bring in different texts to our groups, and we'd see how Jewish scholars debated the same issues that we're dealing with today, and we'd learn about different values. And I think that brought it to me in a way that was much more personal than I felt in Hebrew school or synagogue. And then when I went back into synagogue after Brotherhood and those experiences, I think it became a much stronger community for me, and I felt that I could relate much more to my Jewish identity.
And for me, I think one of the things was bringing Jewish values and relating them to the things that were going on in our everyday lives. So after going to Jewish camp, I went to Eisner for 10 years, there were certain things that we talked about at camp that we didn't talk about at home, certain things that we talked about in our Hebrew school classes or in our youth group that we didn't talk about elsewhere. And Rosh Hodesh was a place that we got to talk about things that really mattered to us, whether it was body image, crushes, other things that were happening in our life, and we were allowed to talk about them openly, and also we were allowed to talk about how they related to our Jewish values. And I miss that. I don't think that we get to talk about that as much, and I don't think that there's as much access for people outside of a typical synagogue setting to do so.
Yeah, I think that you're right on, that part of the power of the group is it's not only that we're bringing the Jewish texts that speak to things that are going on in our lives, but also that as Jewish role models and as a Jewish community, we're saying we care about your development and we want to look holistically at the person that you're becoming, and that we want you to become an adult here with us in this Jewish space, sharing these Jewish values. So, we're not always diving into like huge Masechets, the Talmud and stuff, but the idea is that we're always coming from a perspective of like growing our community and growing strong, responsible. We talk a lot about like menschkeit in Shevet Achim, and the idea of what does it mean to be a good person, a good man is inseparable, at least for me, from the way I was raised and the way I understand the world, from what it means to be a good Jew. And oftentimes parents are asking me, well, where's the Jewish piece here? And I'm saying it's all the Jewish piece. Like, I don't know any other way to be a human being other than to be a Jewish human being, and that's the only thing I can pass on to your kids, is that perspective. So I'm wondering if any of you, we talked about the way Moving Traditions brings the Jewish text to life and tries to relate them to things that are happening in the lives of teens. But I'm wondering, in thinking about the lens of gender, which is such a huge part of this group, if any of your experiences in the Moving Traditions group have sort of affected specifically the way you think about your gender identity, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman.
So I recognize that there's gender that's implied in these programs, and I think that that's a normal part of our world. But I think something that actually Rosh Hodesh taught us was that being a woman, it is what you want it to be. And you make a woman out of who you want to be, and there's no borders or boundaries in that. And for us, we are really excited to have the support and the freedom to decide what a woman or what kind of woman we want it to be. And that was a really supportive thing for us. And also, I think it was more important that we were developing into Jewish individuals than necessarily someone of a particular gender. And that's something that I've carried with me today. And also, I just remember bringing these lessons home to my younger brother. And just because I was in a group of people that identify as women, it didn't mean that these lessons didn't apply to him as well. And at the time, there wasn't a group that was specifically for him. And I kind of wish that he had the opportunity to participate in something that I was able to as well.
So I really resonate with that. When I was in middle school, I was this. Can you help? When I was in middle school, I was this like little closeted gay boy whose sporting ability could probably be best described as he tried, and despite my love of soccer, and that was like really what it meant to be like a guy. In middle school, in my like tiny hallway of a Jewish middle school, was like, can you catch a frisbee and can you throw a football? Neither of which I can really do. And so Shevet Achim became this like incredible place where that was like totally flipped on its head, and where guys who I would see, and I like grew up with in middle school. Now that we were in high school, who were like really, really great on a field. Would be put out of their comfort zone to like be really reflective about themselves and their feelings and what has been going on in their lives. And for me, that was something that came a little bit more naturally. And so like realizing and like watching it unfold before my eyes that like masculinity wasn't just throwing a football, catching a frisbee, hitting a baseball, but also like being reflective, thinking deeply about yourself and your relationships with other people, and the way in which you conduct those relationships was like incredibly formative, and still like is a project that I feel like I'm engaging in and like working on and tinkering with as I now am like 21, looking back on like when I was 16.
Yeah, I think to build off of that, one of the great things that David taught us was that developing, growing, and becoming a young adult and a young man is to learn to respect women, to talk about women and how you relate with them. And I think a lot of our immature humor was really well directed at productive conversations, and he did a really good job of keeping things fun, but also having conversations where we could talk about what it meant to relate with girls in our grade or the female figures in our lives. And I think that was really transformative because you don't have that chance on your school soccer team. You don't have that chance at the lunch table. There really isn't a space that's structured and going to force you to engage with those types of questions and also be something that's fun and that you want to go to every week. So that's stayed with me for sure.
So amongst my group, as common with teenage or mid-tween girls is like popularity and some sort of hierarchy in middle school. And something that you kind of mentioned was the way that our group would break down that total hierarchy, and everyone was just sitting there as an equal group of girls, which was really special because as someone who didn't have the most friends in middle school or high school, I was in a group of girls that like we were all just equal in that room and were able to talk about the same things and ended up becoming best friends with girls in my group who I had never spoken to otherwise because of the difficulties of middle school. Yeah.
So while I personally am not yet a parent, I've worked in a number of spaces, whether it's Hillel or Rosh Hodesh, where I feel like everyone is my children and often refer to them as my kids, which is hopefully okay. But as such, there's a real feeling of reflection when you're the facilitator, of saying to yourself, okay, what was I like when I was this age? And what was I experiencing? And what do I wish I knew? I would imagine many of us find ourselves in either the parenting process or with young people in our lives saying like, oh, I wish they knew this. I wish they understood, you know, how important they are, how valued they are. And these are the things they need to know in order to sort of come to that place of nirvana, I suppose. So I imagine many of us in the room are parents, and maybe some of you have teens in your lives who are approaching the age of perhaps being involved in a moving traditions group. So for the folks on this panel, if you could say something to the parents or the grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, those who have a teen in their lives, what would you say to them about why their young person should involve themselves with moving traditions?
I feel like a lot of parents luckily mine were not like this. Shout out to my dad who's right up here. But I feel like a lot of parents are really invested in like boiling their like kids' success and like metric for success for like 2 years there down to their SAT score. And that's whack. First of all, because like tests don't define you, blah, 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 all that. But also like how much is the 30th SAT, like practice SAT that you drive your kids 30 minutes to and 30 minutes back from, like gonna matter? Like what is this added from the 29th? And what difference tangibly is it gonna make in your child to send them to a 30th SAT for 2 hours instead of sending them to Shevet Achim or Rosh Hodesh for an hour? Like, what's the cost benefit analysis that's going on here? And ultimately, like, I think that we live in a society that like tells us to care about numbers more than we care about character. And I think that like what Shevet Achim is doing is something that is not tangible and not quantifiable, and you can't really measure it, and you don't get to see the immediate effects of it. You only get to see them 10 years later. It's like a fine scotch. And right? But once it's there, right? Like once it's there for good. And I think that that thought process like needs to be taken into account. And the amount of time that you're going to invest in getting it down to a number, getting it up to a number versus like where you want your child to be as a person.
Choose a rabbi.
Along the same lines, I think when you're talking about, when you think about investment, I think something that I really got out of Rosh Hodesh was my investment that my parents made in me as a person. There's so little that goes on in a classroom, at least when I was in public school, that was talking about how to make you a good person, rather than teaching you about the Civil War, which I couldn't tell you anything about, or teaching you about sentence structure, which I couldn't tell you anything about. But I think that this, it's 1 hour a month, maybe. For us, it was like 5 hours a month, and it was the best 5 hours of the whole month. But those 5 hours were transformative, and it was something that we always look forward to in the way that there was nothing else like that we were doing in our month, whether it was, I couldn't even tell you what I was doing in high school, but besides the times that I was spending with my friends in their homes or outside of class, this was the best part of the whole month. And I can't say that enough, and I can't tell you anything about my history classes, but I can tell you so much about all the different Jewish values that we got out of this short investment that made so much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what's been said, again, there's no space like this. I think especially in that middle school, early high school age, it's really just magical. I think when you come into that room with the same group of people and you really get close and you get to talk about all these things that you don't get to talk about or process at any other point in your life at that time, I think looking back on it, it just, like the scotch, it gets better every year. And it's, it's just something really powerful. So I think it's definitely investment in who you are as a person, who you are as a Jew, who you are in the world, and how you want to relate with other people and just becoming someone better.
Also, something that I found really special was, yes, I learned a lot about the Jewish values from the Torah at a young age throughout elementary school, but coming into middle school, it was a very unique way to look at my life and look at my friends' lives through this Jewish lens, which I've definitely brought into my life now, and looking at it through an analytic Jewish lens is something very different than how I approached my life and continue to approach my life now.
I want to speak to what I hear most from parents, which is, I don't know what you do with my kids, but keep doing it. And that seems to be, I think one of the key components of a moving traditions group is confidentiality. Teenagers are naturally sort of finding themselves, and part of that is pushing their parents away and sort of building sort of a wall to allow themselves to grow up a little bit, to give themselves that distance. But one thing is essential is that we don't want teens to be without adult leadership, adult role models, without that kind of the care that an adult and that can bring them, and they're just developmentally they don't want that from their parents right now. So I found that when I was leading the Andrew's group met every month for like 4 to 5 years. Basically, they came together and they developed a network with each other. Like, they could turn to each other if they needed advice, if they needed support, and they could turn to me. So I would get, phone calls at 1 a.m. if they were in trouble and needed advice, or if they were in a sticky situation and didn't necessarily want to talk to their parents first. And the incredible privilege of being someone that a teen is willing to turn to for help and for advice is something that I really don't take lightly, and I feel I feel so lucky that I was able to have that kind of relationship, and I really wish that I had that when I was a teen. I think it would have really helped some of my decision-making processes, and I think that the other thing is that we have a lot of fun at the groups, and they keep coming back because that they're having a really good time. So, yeah.
The one thing I'll say, and then I know we're going to wrap up here, is that in my experience of being a group leader, I would say that even though my role was to help empower these amazing women and really give them the confidence to approach the world in a number of different ways, they actually ended up giving me a lot of the confidence that I needed to approach the world as a then mid-20s person, and now as a slightly older than mid-20s person. I'll actually say that my Rosh Hodesh group inspired me to found a women's organization, because I realized that there was just such an opportunity here that was inspired by Jewish values, was inspired by the amazing women that I worked with, and the organization I founded was called Chutzpanit, From Campus to the C-Suite, and it was a reclamation of the idea of chutzpah that my 7th grade girls, who were full of amazing chutzpah, were so unabashed and proud of how confident they were in exactly who they were. And that inspired me to want to be able to sort of bottle up their incredible energy and find a way to put it out into the universe. So I really can't thank Moving Traditions enough, and also for the incredible women who have inspired me throughout the years, as young as 7th grade, to really give me the confidence as a now 31-year-old working lady to really give them so much kavod there. So what an incredible panel, right? I mean, I suspect that in 10 years, when they've aged, not maybe like Scotch, like cheese maybe, for those of us who are not Scotch aficionados, you'll be leading such an incredible panel just like this. So we really want to thank you for taking your time. Thank you for being such an amazing audience. Congratulations to all of the incredible people in the room tonight, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all, members of the panel, for so eloquently sharing your experiences in Moving Traditions teen groups as participants and as group leaders. I am Hope Suttin, chair of the Moving Traditions Board of Directors, and I am delighted to be here with you this evening. It is heartening to hear that Moving Traditions programs have such deep impact on Jewish youth and on the adults we train to mentor teens in their monthly Rosh Hodesh and Shevet groups. I hope you all feel as encouraged as I do that Moving Traditions is helping these teens to flourish and feel more connected to each other and their Jewish community. The positive impact Moving Traditions has on the next generation is why I, and I would imagine so many of us here in this room, choose to support Moving Traditions work. My decision to become more involved with Moving Traditions took place several years ago, having seen the impact of this work on my own daughters, Rachel and Liana, who participated in Moving Traditions Rosh Hodesh groups. Core to Moving Traditions work is the belief that we need to teach our youth how to build meaningful Jewish community for themselves and their peers. Through our teen groups and through our newest program, the B'nai Mitzvah Family Education Program, about which you will hear more later, Moving Tradition shows teens and their parents that Jewish wisdom and community can help us live lives of meaning. Since its inception in 2005, Alisa Robbins Doctoroff sensed the potential of Moving Tradition's vision and has generously supported our organization ever since. Alisa has helped Moving Traditions to grow through her generosity and through her leadership as a longtime board member. It is truly a pleasure to honor you, Alisa, for all you do for Moving Traditions and for Jewish communal life, as a member, as a philanthropist, and as a leader. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the Emeritus Chief Rabbi of England, writes in his book, Celebrating Life, "Community is the human expression of divine love. It is where I am valued simply for who I am, how I live, and what I give to others." By giving so much of yourself to create community, Alisa, you have inspired so many of us here this evening to feel, as Rabbi Sachs suggests, the blessing of community, to feel valued for who we are. I stepped into this position of board chair following in the footsteps of the talented and admirable Sally Gottesman, who founded Moving Traditions with Deborah Meyer, and who you will hear from later this evening. My job has been a pleasure, and no doubt made easier by Sally and Alisa's dedication and years of service to Moving Traditions. Thank you, Alisa, for being a blessing, and now please join me here on the podium.
Thank you so much, Hope. I'm very moved to be here for Moving Traditions, and particularly to follow this panel. I think what you just heard from Dana, David, and our alums, and from Deborah before them is really why I've been involved with Moving Traditions. It's really why I value its approach to teens, to Judaism, and why I'm standing here tonight. Some of you are here because you too know about Moving Traditions and value what they brought to the field of teen Jewish education over the many years since its founding, and it is many at this point. Some of you are here because of me and don't know very much about Moving Traditions, and I'm deeply thankful for your presence. I think you're already getting an idea of what this program is all about, what's so special about it, why it's so important for our teens, particularly in today's world. To be a little more explicit about why I'm here, my personal mission has been to raise the bar on the educational, religious, and cultural programs and experiences that the Jewish community offers for young people, and frankly, for all of us. For more Jews to be turned on rather than turned off, to have the opportunity to see the relevance of Judaism's texts, to understand and feel the power of its traditions and the strength of its ideas to help guide us through the complexity of our world and to do good in it. Also to see that Judaism doesn't need to be separate from our lives, and I think you heard that in what the teens were saying, or actually, I'm sorry, not teens anymore, older people. That this doesn't need to live only in a synagogue or in a prayer space, but can and should be integrated into it, into our lives. Moving Traditions has done this and more for teens, as you've heard. It's not a simple achievement. It's the result of smart strategic leadership in founding and current executive director Deborah Meyer, founding board chair Sally Gottesman, and current board chair Hope Suttin. It's the result of a clear mission that's visible in everything it takes on. It's the result of commitment to excellence of program that emerges from great educational professionals and that consults with experts, does research, despite the fact that it's hard to measure, and that does evaluation, iteration, thinking outside the box. You get the idea. But I digress a bit. My role here tonight is to give you some insight into the new program that we're piloting for kids and their families who are approaching bar and bat mitzvah. So I guess it's really for preteens. And to give you an opportunity to experience it a bit yourselves, much in the same way that kids might do. We're going to look at one session that sixth graders in 46 synagogues around the country have done this year. The session is called The Center of Attention. It seemed perfect for tonight because, well, here I am, the center of attention. More than that, I chose it because it was a theme that resonated deeply for me. Part of being a public leader is being the center of attention. Well, I've been privileged to be in positions of leadership in the Jewish community over the course of my life, and have enjoyed many, many aspects of it. Being the center of attention is really not one of them. It's not natural for me, and I've had to work at being comfortable with it. I'm even bad at accepting compliments. Just ask anyone in my family. And I'm an adult. Yet the challenge of being the center of attention is one that the Jewish community foists on 12 and 13-year-olds at their B'nai Mitzvah. And it's not necessarily a focus of bar bat mitzvah training or what synagogues prepare young people for. The Moving Traditions B'nai Mitzvah curriculum does. The session starts by naming the challenge. You're in a vulnerable moment of your life when your body is changing and you might not look like how you look or how you sound, and now a crowd of people, both adults and peers, will have their eyes on you and listen to you chant, sing, teach Torah, dance the Hora, and be lifted in a chair. When I think back to this time in my own life, I remember my physical self-consciousness vividly. I had round, gold, wire-rimmed glasses, silver braces, yes, Mom, you remember those days, and hair that I wrestled with on an ongoing basis. I was taller than most of my peers and flat-chested. On the positive side, no pimples. I'm guessing that today with social media, I would have been even more sensitive to the gap between my adolescent self and the ideal teen. Our goal is to help young people deal with this challenge and others that arise during this time of bar mitzvah, challenges that will last well beyond it. So how does Moving Traditions do this? One way is by introducing young people to mechanisms for better understanding themselves and to give them time to reflect and to share. As an example, in the Center of Attention session, they're introduced to the concept of introverts and extroverts. Learning about introversion and extroversion can provide some key insights to young people on their path to self-discovery. We've included a quiz that we asked them to take in your program. I'm sure that you've all thought about this topic by now in your lives, but I definitely don't remember thinking about it so specifically and directly at the age of 13, or had the opportunity to discuss strategies for dealing with it in a safe space. Not to out anyone, but I'm curious, by a show of hands, who here would consider themselves to be an extrovert? I'm not going to ask the introverts. As Deborah said, Moving Traditions programs always include a chance to think through a gender lens about whatever issue is on the table, as well as to explore it through a Jewish values framework. Some of the behaviors that gender norms dictate are good and helpful, but they can also be limiting and cause suffering. We've made some progress, for example, in understanding that a woman or a girl can be the center of attention for her accomplishments and not just her looks. But now girls may feel that they're being judged on every aspect of their lives. They're encouraged to be perfect, to be beautiful, to excel in school and sports and community involvements. Gender norms encourage boys to perform, to be funny, to project an image of someone who doesn't need help and doesn't get nervous. We create spaces where kids of all genders can talk about these expectations, holding on to what works for them, getting rid of what doesn't, and adding new options for how to be and explore all of who they are. As I mentioned before, the B'nai Mitzvah program is also for parents. Parents are looking for guidance too, as their child is becoming a teen. Our program includes 10 hours of family education that synagogues are using to engage parents of 6th and 7th graders in meaningful discussions on the topic. It's important for families to feel supported by the Jewish community at life cycle moments and to see that their synagogue is providing something that they actually need, something that's relevant. The in-person program is also supplemented by a podcast that we've created that brings experts and research to bear on whatever topic is at hand. But let's get back to your participation this evening. The session acknowledges that part of preparing to be the center of attention is exactly that, preparing. Even people who have a lot of experience performing in front of a group of people, and I see many of you out here tonight, can experience nerves before getting in front of an audience. Some people find it helpful to perform a personal ritual or a meditation or say a prayer prior to performing. In college, my then boyfriend Dan would play a psych-up song complete with air guitar before taking a final exam. I'll tell you the songs later. And here's where the Jewish tradition comes in. No, not in Dan's psych-up song. As you may know, there's a short prayer called the Hineni, which cantors often recite on Yom Kippur before leading the Musaf part of the service. In it, they share how scared they feel about standing before and leading the whole congregation, and they ask for help from God. Rather than hiding their vulnerability, they share it, and by sharing it, in a sense, they diffuse it. The prayer begins with the word Hineni, which means here I am, and can be seen as a way of focusing on who you are, rather than being caught up in others' expectations of you, or who you are supposed to be in this important moment. It shows that part of being up to the task of leading is admitting the ways you do not feel fully up to it. So in a minute, I will ask you to take some time to think about your own practices for getting up the courage to do hard things, to take risks, to show leadership. What do you currently do? What has worked well for you? What do you want to remember the next time you're facing a challenge? Create your Hineni, a short statement of something energizing and inspiring that you might do or say before taking a risk. Then share this or something you learned about yourself by doing it with someone sitting near you at the table. The actual Hineni prayer is on page 10 of your program, and there is space for you to write on page 11, and there are also pens on your table. So let's take 5 minutes to do this now, and then we'll reconvene. Go. For those of you who took the time to do this exercise, I hope that you learned something about yourselves, about each other, and gained some insight into how Moving Traditions thinks about our work with teens. Before concluding, I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this celebration, for your amazing support and for your incredible generosity. I want to give a special shout out to my family who are sitting here at this table. Thank you, family. My parents, my children, my husband, Dan. I also want to thank the Moving Traditions staff, and in particular, Lisa Gersten, for her extraordinary efforts in making this evening so festive, meaningful, and successful. And lastly, I want to share my own Hineni prayer with you at this moment of being honored by Moving Traditions. I suppose that I should have said it at the beginning, but I didn't. So I'll say it now before we close the night with some words from Sally, some more festivities, and dessert. Dessert, yes. Hineni, I stand here in front of you all on this awesome night of celebration, singled out for honor, as if I am the one. But I know this is not so. I am not alone here, but embraced by all of you and elevated to my best self by this embrace. My dear family and friends, my teachers and colleagues, my history and tradition, you have nourished me, strengthened me, and given me courage. May I always be worthy of, grateful for, and conscious of your embrace. Return it to others, and may it inspire me to always do good in the world. Thank you.
Alisa, what an honor it is to honor you and to be here on behalf of everyone in a Hineni moment, to tell you how much we admire you and to express our great gratitude to you for all you have done for Moving Traditions. Alisa, I suspect that few people know that you joined the Moving Traditions board when the organization was just in its infancy. Indeed, you and I met because of Moving Traditions. It was 2005 when Schiffer Bronsnick suggested that I reach out to you and tell you about our nascent organization. You and I took a walk in Riverside Park together, and I told you about what we were then, a Jewish experiential education organization focused on teens and gender issues with one program, Rosh Hodesh, that reached 2,000 girls. We had an office in Philadelphia, 4 staff people, and a budget of $700,000. A critical need was to build an effective board, one with people who were visionary. We were looking for just the right people, and I asked you on that walk if you would join us, and maybe you remember, but I think you said yes almost on that walk. 14 years later, Moving Traditions has reached 23,000 boys and girls, trained 1,800 women and men to mentor teens. We employ 23 professionals who staff 6 different regions of the country. Our budget is $3.2 million, and we estimate that $6 million goes into Moving Traditions programming because the facilitators are paid by the institutional partners. Alisa, you helped to make this possible. And I want to share with everyone here tonight some unique qualities that you brought to Moving Traditions on your 12 years of board service. Luckily for us, at the beginning of the organization, we didn't have term limits. First, you were dedicated to and consistently spoke up for meaningful, serious, and relevant pluralistic Jewish education for all who participated in Moving Traditions programming. You did this because, as you talked about tonight, you yourself are a lifelong learner who finds great wisdom in meaningful, relevant, and relevant Judaism. You showed us this tonight when you taught and when you gave your prayer, just so lovely at the Hineni moments. And you modeled this for all of us by how you live your life with integrity, humility, and a deep conviction that quality Jewish education and Judaism itself can be a meaningful component of a life well lived. The second quality you shared was your ability to help us make hard choices. I remember driving down to Philadelphia with you in 2006. We took your car. We were going there to meet Deborah Meyer to answer the question, with our next dollar, do we want to replicate the program that we have, or do we want to have kids who are in the program stay in the program and do it for a longer time? As always, you came prepared to that meeting. You asked discerning questions. You took initiative. You were forward-thinking, and you never hedged but helped us answer the question. I remember driving back to New York with you that night and feeling relief that day we had come up with a thoughtful, strategic path forward, in large part because you were there. And all along during your time with Moving Traditions, you said yes to making introductions to us for people who you thought could be helpful, to joining the strategic planning committee, to using the gifts you have of taking diverse ideas and formulating them into a cogent and better one. You spoke up clearly when you thought we had an idea that was a bad one, and because you are you, you always did so with care and with grace. The final quality I want to highlight is one that perhaps is the most unusual. It is your ability to provide leadership in so many different types of worlds. Heschel, JTS, UJA Federation, the Jewish Agency, Hadar, the Jim Joseph Foundation. Yes, they are all Jewish organizations, but they can be quite different from one another. And few people, maybe no one, moves with such ease between them as you do, because you care about what each one stands for, and you're the kind of person who translates care into action. In 2005, Moving Traditions looked out there, trying to say we embolden teens by fostering self-discovery, challenging sexism, and inspiring a commitment to Jewish life and learning. It didn't matter to you that we were out there and that we didn't have any cachet. You recognized the need, and it is seeing a job that must be done and doing it with others, no matter who they are, that is your driving force and what makes you so very unique. Alisa, 2 years ago, when I stepped down as chair of Moving Traditions, you presented me with my award. I am thrilled tonight to be able to present you with your award. It's a paper cut by the same artist that says Hineni on it. And I just want to say that I am grateful to have learned from you, to be inspired by you, and to be your friend. And I know this room is filled with people who feel likewise.
I want to say thank you to Shifra, who brought us together.
Daniel Brenner and Tamara Cohen, who both are senior professionals and Moving Traditions, are now joining us for a blessing for you.
Hinach, Alisa, here you are, fully worthy and fit for leadership.
Level-headed, steady, as you take on the challenges of the Jewish people and the challenges of our time.
Alisa, we celebrate you tonight for stepping into being the center of attention, for all the ways in which you have enhanced the life of Moving Traditions and the life of so many young people.
So grateful for the ways in which you raise the bar in every circle that you sit in, how you have raised the bar for us as an organization and raised the bar for so many who work to create the next generation of Jewish people.
And so we ask the source of life, the one who answered the prayers of our foremothers and forefathers, to be with you here tonight and to be with you in morning meetings and in afternoon meetings, in strategy sessions and on Zoom calls, in the heights of leadership and in moments of quiet reflection.
There is a question that was asked, how do you bless someone who has so many blessings? The answer that Reb Nachman of Breslov gave is that the only blessing you can give is that the saplings that come from your tree grow as strong as you have grown.
And so I'd like to invite everybody to stand up and hold your glass of water, because we want to say not only l'chaim, but l'mayim, something we say in Shevet. And in that way, connect the water that's in your glasses to the memory, the sacred memory of Miriam's well, the source of healing and sustenance for our people long ago on our journey in the desert. And with that, thank you for being here with us on our journey, and wish you sustenance and ongoing strength and happiness and joy as we journey forth together. So let's say, L'chaim, L'mayim. Amen.
And now please join us for dessert.